It was the summer vacation of my senior year of high school. Me and my 5 friends were tired from studying for the entrance examinations, and it was also the last summer vacation of high school. We made a plan to go on a trip somewhere. However, since the summer vacation had already started, there was a waiting list at all the tourist spots. I had a hard time finding a place to stay. Finally, I found a place to stay in a highland in the Kinki region. I finally found a place to stay at a pension in the Kinki region. I found information on the internet that there were still vacancies at a pension in a highland. I decided to stay at a pension in the Kinki region, and I thought it would be fine if there were no complaints even if I made a lot of noise. On the day of the trip, we left early in the morning and arrived there before noon, but there was a slight problem. Apparently, there was a miscommunication between the travel agency and the Pensions Management Association. We were going to stay at the pension for 3 days and 2 nights from today. We had made a reservation for 3 days and 2 nights from today, but the pension told us that we would be staying 3 days from today. We had come all the way here to find out that there was none available. We complained that we had come all this way and that was not possible. But we were not here just for sightseeing, and we were looking for a place where we could make noise in the middle of the night and not get complaints. We were not just here for sightseeing, and we wanted a place where we could make noise at night and not get any complaints. Then, the pensioner started calling somewhere with his cell phone, saying, "Well, I'd like you to wait a moment." I did not understand the content of the call well, but it seemed that they were in some kind of a dispute. After about 15 minutes on the phone, he seemed to have reached an agreement and said, "There is a rental villa nearby. How about there?" He said, "We'll give you a discount of 3% of the pension's fee since it was our fault." We agreed, but then things started to get a little weird. Apparently, the villa had not been used for a long time, and it would take some time to prepare and clean it. We were given transportation expenses and discount tickets to the aquarium, so we were told to kill some time there and come back in the evening. The aquarium was quite a distance from the pension, or rather, it was located in a large city outside of the prefecture. By the time we came back after seeing the aquarium, it was almost 6 p.m. We were thinking, how long has it been abandoned that it took this long to get ready? We said, "I don't get it." We headed for the management office, saying such things as, "Something looks fishy here." When I returned to the pension, a different man was waiting for me and ready to show me around. He took me to a villa in the forest about 15 minutes away on foot. The place was completely in the forest and there was nothing around, so even if I made a lot of noise, there would be no complaints. The man told us that the house had not been used for a while, so it took some time to get there, but electricity, water, and gas were working, and the cell phone was in good condition. There is also a direct phone line to the management hut, although there is no cell phone service. He began to explain to us that there was no problem. We felt he was getting desperate, and we began to feel uneasy. We were getting quite anxious, but there was nothing we could do about it now, so we went inside the villa. The villa was an old Western-style building that looked about 30 or 40 years old, as was the exterior. The interior was also quite old-fashioned. However, it was quite neat and clean, despite the fact that it had not been used for a long time. In retrospect, it would be better to say almost no signs of human use rather than neat and tidy. After listening to a brief explanation of the villa, we unloaded our luggage and were ready to prepare for the barbecue for supper. As we were getting ready to prepare a barbecue for dinner, the man said something strange as he was leaving. He asked us not to go out late at night because there is a possibility of bears appearing here at night. For some reason, we were made to promise, quite carefully, not to go out late at night. In a place like this, only 15 minutes away from a cluster of pensions. We all wondered, well, they probably don't want the kids to go out in the middle of the night and cause problems or accidents, so they are trying to scare them off. I was convinced that they were probably trying to scare the kids because they didn't want them to go out at night and cause trouble or get into accidents. The first day passed like that, and after dinner, we went for a walk in the woods at midnight, and played with fireworks and games. After dinner, we went for a walk in the woods at midnight, played games, and went to bed around 2 a.m. Nothing strange happened that day, but the next day one of my friends said something strange. The guy needed to take a leak in the middle of the night, and when he went to the bathroom, he heard a drumming sound coming from outside. We let it go, saying it was probably just a mishearing, and he agreed that it was probably just his imagination, but that night an incident occurred. That night, however, an incident occurred. That day, we had eaten barbecued meat for dinner and had no time to do anything else. We decided to go to a forest road we found during the day to test our courage. Nothing happened during the test of courage and we were bored and went back to the villa. We returned to the villa and found a man in his late 20s standing at the entrance, holding the doorknob. A man in his late 20s was standing at the entrance, holding the doorknob. The time was around 10 p.m. We didn't think the caretaker would come at this hour, so we approached him and asked, "Is this a burglar?" We approached him. But the man kept his hand on the doorknob and did not even turn his head. Since we could hear his footsteps and voice, we thought he would run away if he was a burglar or a suspicious person. However, the man did not move even when we approached him at a distance of about 10 meters. Something was weird, but my friend and I, who was the leader among the members, said, "What are you doing, old man?" We approached the man and came right in front of him, but he still did not seem to move. My friend pulled the guy's arm and said, "Don't you hear me?" and pulled the guy's arm. At that moment, my friend and I both yelled out "Oh" and jumped backwards. Why did we jump? When my friend grabbed the guy's arm and pulled, about 10 centimeters from the wrist. When my friend grabbed the guy's arm and pulled, the arm bent at a point about 10 centimeters from the wrist, like rubber, from a non-joint. My other friends approached to see what was going on, but only then did the man turn around. He looked normal, but his eyes were unfocused, as if he couldn't quite tell where he was looking. His mouth was slack-jawed and drooling, and it was only then that I realized that he was wearing very ragged clothes and did not look like a normal person. He didn't look like a normal person by any stretch of the imagination. As we stared at the man in amazement, he walked off into the woods as if he didn't see us. He walked off into the forest as if he did not see us at all. We were so shaken by what had happened that we could not move for a while. However, we couldn't just stay there, so we rushed into the villa and closed the door. After that, we all checked the locks on all the doors in the room, and when we were done, we gathered in the living room. Then we all gathered in the living room. I touched it. How could that arm bend like that? And then, this time, from outside, a voice came in and said, "What the hell is that?" And the faint sound of drums? The sound seemed to be approaching us, albeit slowly. The sound seemed to be slowly approaching us. We were all silent, listening and concentrating on the sound. When the sound approached the garden area, my anxiety reached a peak and I couldn't stand it any longer, so I opened the curtains in the living room and looked outside. And then, I could not see well in the darkness, but I saw something large and spherical rolling toward me. The drum-like sound seemed to be coming from the spherical object. It was slowly coming toward us along the road from the main street to the villa, repeating the process. I think it was about 5 to 6 meters in size. My other friends seemed to be concerned about my not moving while looking at the window, so they all came to the side of the window to look at it. We all watched it silently for a while, but since it was dark and we couldn't understand it well, we couldn't figure out what it was, and no one said a word. No one spoke a word, but kept staring at it. When it got quite close, it came close to the front door, and the security light on the front door turned on. At that moment I said, "What the hell was that? That ain't fancy," and hurriedly closed the curtains. Before I closed the curtains, the light shone on me for a moment, and I couldn't describe it in any way. It was an object that could be described as a mass of countless people. People of all ages and genders, men and women, mouths open and drooling just like the man I saw earlier, seemingly looking nowhere. With their eyes unfocused, their bodies intertwined with each other, regardless of joints or anything else. Dozens of people were rolling around in one mass. We were too frightened to say anything, and we were all in a lump at the edge of the living room, shivering and saying anxious things like "What's going on?" We were all in one lump at the edge of the living room, shivering and saying anxious words like "What's going on?" and "What the hell is this?" After a while, we stopped hearing the thumping sound like the beating of a drum. We were still at the edge of the living room, not knowing whether it was gone or not. This time, it came from the front door. I heard a violent banging on the door. I covered my ears in a panic of fear and anxiety, and the other guys all covered their ears too, desperately enduring the situation. After a while, the sound of banging came from all over the building. I could hear the sound of many people pounding on the walls, windows, and everywhere else. One of my friends, unable to stand it any longer, said, "Let's make a phone call." We suddenly realized what was happening and rushed to the phone by the front door. I picked up the phone and pressed the button marked direct line, and after a few calls, the man who had guided us to the villa picked up the phone. I frantically told him what had happened, and he mumbled to himself, "I didn't think you'd still answer." After muttering to himself, he said, "I'll explain later. There is a commodana in the living room, right? There's an omuda and sellotape in there. Put the money on the door and wait for me." We had no idea what he meant, but with no other solution, we decided to go back to the living room and look for the altar anyway. The altar was at the end of the room, near the ceiling. Using a chair, we peeked inside, and sure enough, there was a bill and a roll of cellophane tape. We hurriedly took them out, and put the money on the front door, the living room entrance door, and the window. When I was putting the bill on the window, I tried not to look out as much as possible, but I looked out for a moment. Then I saw several pale arms gunning for the window, and furthermore, beyond the arms, I saw a person's face in a way that was unnatural to the position of the arms, for all intents and purposes. Beyond the arms, I saw a human face in a way that was unnatural to the position of the arms. The face was still slack-mouthed with eyes as unfocused as the others. I was too frightened to even think about what it looked like outside. After what seemed like hours, when it began to get light outside, I heard no more banging on the walls, doors, or windows. Still, I could not move, thinking that it might still be there at any moment, so I stayed still. As I sat still, I began to hear a car coming toward me from the distance. As the car came to a stop in the yard, I heard the footsteps of several people, the sound of a doorbell being pressed, and the sound of someone saying, "Hey, are you okay? Are you okay?" I heard a voice say. We said, "Thank God," and rushed outside to see the first person who had arranged this place and the person who had shown us around. And 3 other guys had arrived. The person who made the arrangements and the person who showed us around said apologetically, "I'm really sorry, I thought everything was fine. I'll explain the situation to you, just go ahead and pack up your stuff." We did as he said and left the villa. They put us in a car and took us to the shrine. The 3 people who came with us seemed to be related to the shrine. We were relieved and the tension was released and we felt saved, but we were more than that. I got angry and said, "Why the hell did you let us stay in that place?" I was so angry that I said, "Why did you make us stay in that place?" Then, a man who seemed to be the head priest of the shrine began to tell us the following story. That place used to be just a forest until the 1965s, but they decided to develop it as a tourist spot, so people came in there at the end of the 1965s. But at the end of the 1960s, people started to develop the area as a tourist spot. The development was progressing smoothly, but something strange started to happen in the early 1975s when that villa was built. But strange things started happening in the early 1975s when the villa was built. Even now, They don't know if it was the villa or the development itself, but anyway. The owner of the first villa and the next owner of the second villa started disappearing while they were staying there. The owner of the first villa and the owner of the second disappeared while staying there. So it was put up for sale and became a rental villa, now owned by the management association. The mass of that person appeared many times, and although no one was harmed, I received many complaints from witnesses. The go-down performed a purification ceremony about 10 years ago. Since then, it had not been rented out, but none of the people who came to clean and maintain it had seen it. It is said that the result of the incident last night was that the Goddess of Mercy had to leave the house to the people who came to clean and maintain it. The result was last night's incident. We complained a lot because we were the victims of the incident, and the manager told us that we would have to pay for transportation and food to get here. We complained a lot and the manager told us that we would have to pay for our transportation and food to get here, that we did not have to pay for the rental of the villa, and that the next time we took a trip we would get a big discount. I will also talk to the agency to get a big discount on our next trip, so I'm really sorry, but please keep quiet about this. We were very sorry, but we asked them to keep quiet about this. We felt like we were being talked into something, but we knew that the police would not believe us if we told them the story. We felt like we were being talked out of it, but we reluctantly agreed to take the deal because we knew they wouldn't believe us anyway. This is the end of this story. Thanks for listening to the end.